Hey everybody, this is Mr. Marshall at Stony Lane, and I want to talk to you a little bit about reading today. And I know that you and your class have been working on something called signposts, right? Signposts are these different things that you've learned about, right? There's words of the wiser, when there's an older, wiser character that gives some advice to another character. There's contrasts and contradictions. That's when something is the opposite of what you would think it needs to be, right? Again and again, that's when something happens again and again inside of a story. And aha moments, when a character learns something, like a big deal something. A memory moment, when a character is remembering something that happened in his or her life. Or tough questions, right? Something that's a really hard life kind of question that either the author is asking or a character is asking, okay? And so a lot of you are getting really good at naming the signposts when you see them inside a book, okay? You recognize that that thing is happening, and that's great. That's great. But, sometimes there's things that we do that are one step, and sometimes we do things that are two steps, okay? So the first step is naming the signpost. So that's great. But if you don't go on to step two, you're really missing the point. You're really not using the signpost to help you read the book, okay? You're just doing an activity, okay? You have to really think about what the signpost means and think about how it makes you smarter about the book, okay? So, within each signpost, there's things that you should be thinking when you recognize that the signpost is there. So, for example, in contrasts and contradictions, if you notice that something really is happening the opposite way of the way it's supposed to, you're supposed to stop and think, why is the character doing that? Because it's just really surprising. It's really, really strange, right? Or like in a memory moment, when a character is remembering something that happened in his or her life, you've got to stop and say, why is this memory important? Because the author wouldn't include that in the story if it weren't important, okay? Does that make sense? You need to be thinking about the signpost, but also then thinking about how the signpost is making you smarter about your book, okay? Otherwise, you're really not thinking like a reader, right? So I want to show you what I mean. So this is a book that I've done a lot of work with. I've read this aloud to many kids and many teachers, and I've actually got a video on this YouTube channel about that. And so let's think about this book. If you don't know this book yet, go find it on my YouTube channel, watch the read aloud, and then come back, and then the rest of this lesson will make sense to you, okay? The Old Woman Who Named Things. And so in this book, there's an old woman who names things, right? Remember? She names her house, and she names her car, and she names her chair, and she names all these things. She gives them names. And then all of a sudden, this puppy shows up at her gate, and she tells the puppy to go home. She tells the puppy to go home. Who does that, right? Tells this puppy to go home, but before the puppy goes home, she feeds it, right? And then the puppy goes home until the next day when the puppy's back and she feeds it again. And then she tells it to go home. So this puppy keeps coming back and the woman keeps telling him to go home. That's something that happens again and again in this book, right? It happens again and again in this book. So she's sending the puppy home. Why? What's the question here? Why does this keep happening? Why does it keep happening that the old woman is sending this puppy home? So I want to think about all that I know about the old woman and think, well, how would that make sense that she's sending this puppy home again and again, day after day? So what do I know about the old woman at the beginning of this story? Well, I know that the author tells us that she has outlived all her friends, like they've all died. And I know that she's given names to objects that couldn't outlive her, like her bed or her house or her car or her chair, right? And I guess like she's afraid that she's going to outlive the puppy, right? So she sends it away. It would be really hard to keep a puppy around and just give it a name, and know that it might die, right? That would be horrible. And so it's making me think how, yeah, it's really bad to send away a puppy, a cute puppy that wants to come and love you. But I guess it's the only thing she can do because she doesn't want to be sad again, right? She doesn't want to be sad again. So that's why that keeps happening again and again. Do you see how I use the signpost to make my reading better? I use the signpost not just to say, I know the signpost, I know the signpost. I use the signpost to think about my book and get a new idea about the character in my book or about something in my book. Okay? That's what you're supposed to do with these signposts. So as you read, continue to be the kind of reader who thinks about signposts, but then think about all the little questions that come after the signposts. Okay? If you don't remember all the questions, just pause the video and look at them right now because they're all right there. Think about these and how they make you think about your book because that's the most important thing. And I'll see you.